I watched my daughter's kidnapper smile at me as he held her hand in a family photo I wasn't supposed to see. It was framed, perfectly centered on a dusty shelf in his living room. Her little face, my Sophie, was tucked right under his arm. She was older, maybe 6 or 7 now, but I knew those eyes. I grew them myself. I nearly collapsed when I saw it, but let me back up. 5 years ago, my life shattered in one horrific afternoon. I was picking Sophie up from daycare, like I always did on Tuesdays. I was late that day. Just 10 minutes. Traffic, nothing unusual. But when I got there, the teacher was crying. "She's gone," she whispered. A man said he was her uncle. He showed ID. He knew your name, your number. That moment split my soul in two. I don't remember screaming. I don't remember the sirens or the police report. Just this buzzing in my ears, and the unbearable silence in the backseat of my car where Sophie's booster seat still waited. The investigation dragged for months. No leads. No ransom demand. Just silence. Like she vanished into air. Eventually, the police stopped calling. My husband, her stepfather, tried to hold me together, but it broke us too. A year later, we divorced, but I never stopped searching. I quit my job. Moved across the state. Took part-time work just to keep traveling, hunting, following any whisper of a lead. Then, 2 weeks ago, a woman at a gas station in a town I'd never heard of, Fair Hollow, said something I'll never forget. "That girl looks like you," she said, nodding toward a schoolyard across the street. I turned. The kids were playing, running, laughing. But one little girl stood near the fence, twirling her hair, eyes scanning the cars like she was waiting, and God help me, it was her. I knew it the way a mother knows the feel of her baby's cry before it starts. I got out of the car and walked closer. But before I could reach her, a man in a baseball cap came out of nowhere. He smiled at her, took her hand, and they walked away. My legs wouldn't move. I didn't sleep that night. I parked outside that school the next day. And the next. I watched. Learned his patterns. His name was Marcus Lane. He lived on County Route 9 in a modest farmhouse with blue shutters. He ran a hardware store. Everyone in town liked him. They called him quiet, helpful, sweet with his daughter, Maddie, they said, but she wasn't Maddie, she was mine. It took everything in me to smile when I walked into his store the next week, pretending to shop for paint. And that's when I saw it, the photo, that snapshot of a life he built on my agony. That lie hanging in a wooden frame. My hands trembled as I pointed to a color swatch. "Mind mixing this one for me?" He nodded, cheerful. Walked into the back, and I ran. I didn't know what I was going to do, but I knew this much. He stole my daughter, and I was going to burn his whole world down to get her back. I parked 2 streets down from his house that night, lights off, engine cold. The farmhouse was dim, only one upstairs window glowed faintly, like a nightlight had been left on. I could see the silhouette of a child's curtains fluttering gently in the breeze. I wondered if she still slept with a nightlight. I used to leave a soft yellow lamp on for her, shaped like a bunny. She hated the dark. Would cry if she woke up alone. Now she was sleeping in a stranger's house, calling a monster daddy. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached I couldn't just storm in. I had no proof. No birth certificate. No court order. And the police? I'd tried them before. Over and over. They needed evidence, not a mother's gut instinct, but I wasn't leaving this town without her. The next morning, I followed his car. He dropped her off at school, same time as always, then headed to his store. I gave it a few minutes, heart hammering, before pulling into the school parking lot. I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I didn't even know if she'd remember me, but when she stepped onto the playground for recess, my breath caught in my throat. She was taller now. Her hair a little darker. But the way she tilted her head when she laughed? That was Sophie. That was my baby girl. I stood behind the fence, just watching. And then, as if she sensed me, she turned, our eyes met, time stopped, she stared, confused, curious, and then, slowly, took a step toward me. Sophie? I whispered, barely loud enough for myself to hear. Before she could take another step, a whistle blew. A teacher called her back. She hesitated, glanced over her shoulder one last time, then ran off with the others. I stood there shaking, tears blurring the world. She saw me. She looked at me. She didn't scream. Didn't run, she felt it. Something inside her remembered that night. I made my move. I waited until Marcus left for his usual evening jog, predictable as always. I parked where I couldn't be seen, crept across the overgrown lawn, and picked the back lock with trembling hands. The house smelled like pine cleaner and something sweet, apples, maybe. I moved through the kitchen slowly, every creak of the floor like a siren in my ears. Photos lined the hallway, Maddie at the beach, Maddie in a Halloween costume, Maddie with a birthday cake, and then I found it. A drawer in his study. Locked. But I was prepared. Inside were documents. Birth certificates. Adoption forms. Old mail, and one envelope, yellowed and bent, marked "Do not open" in red pen. I didn't hesitate. Inside were hospital records. Sophie's real name. My name. Her birth date, and a forged custody agreement. With a fake court seal. My hands were shaking so violently I could barely hold the paper. He'd stolen her, and built a paper trail to keep her. I snapped pictures of everything. Every sheet, every stamp, every lie. And then I heard the screen door creak. He was back. I ducked into the hallway, heart in my throat. Hello, he called, casually. Maddie? You still up? Footsteps. He hadn't seen me yet. But he would. I slipped out the back door, jumped the fence, and sprinted to my car like my life depended on it, because it did. When I got back to my motel, I collapsed on the floor, clutching the phone. I had the proof now. Real, legal proof, but what would happen if I called the police? Would they storm in and terrify her? Would she think I was the bad guy? What if he convinced her I was lying? I needed help. Someone who knew how to handle this, carefully. So I called my ex-husband. Her stepfather, the only person who ever loved her almost as much as I did. He picked up on the first ring, and when I told him what I'd found, he didn't even hesitate. I'm coming. We're getting her back. He arrived the next morning, exhausted but alert, the way a soldier looks before battle. When I opened the motel door and saw him standing there, duffel bag slung over his shoulder, eyes bloodshot but burning with purpose, I almost broke down. We hadn't seen each other in nearly 2 years. Our marriage hadn't survived the grief, but in that moment, none of it mattered. He walked in, looked at the stack of photos and documents I had spread across the table, and said, "She's really alive." I nodded, "And he's still walking around like he's her father," I whispered. "Not for long." We spent the day planning, carefully. Every move, every risk. He made calls to lawyers he knew through his old firm, asked questions without giving names. What would a court do if the biological mother had proof, but no custody order? Would the girl be taken by CPS? How long would the process take? The answers weren't comforting. Even with proof, one contact said, if the child's been with him for years, they won't just hand her over. You'd be looking at an emergency hearing. Possibly foster care in the meantime. I couldn't let her go into the system. Not after everything. We needed something stronger. Faster. That's when he suggested it. We make him confess. I blinked. Get him on record admitting he took her, he said. It's risky. But if we can do it, there's no judge in the world who wouldn't give her back to you. My heart pounded. You want me to go back there? I asked. To his house? He nodded, not alone. I'll be nearby. We'll wire you up. Get everything on tape. It was insane. Dangerous. But I had no other option. The next evening, just before sunset, I walked into his hardware store again, this time. I didn't fake a smile. Marcus, I said, voice shaking, we need to talk. He looked up from behind the counter, confused, then wary. Sorry, the shop's closed, I'm not here for paint, I cut in. I'm here for Sophie. He froze, the air thickened. The old radio behind him played a soft country song, cheerful and jarring. You've made a mistake, he said, carefully. My daughter's name is Maddie. She's not yours, I whispered. She never was. He came around the counter slowly, hands raised like I was a wounded animal about to bolt. I don't know what you think you saw, but I have. The records, I snapped. The fake custody papers. The hospital forms. You forged them. You took her from daycare and vanished. His face changed, not panic. Not guilt, pity. She was crying, he said quietly. Alone. You were late. She looked so sad. I just picked her up. Like she was a bag of groceries? I hissed. He looked down. I didn't hurt her. I never laid a finger on her. I gave her a life. She calls me daddy. She loves me. She doesn't know the truth. She didn't want to leave, he muttered. That first week, she cried. But not for you. For me. She forgot your name. In 2 months. That gutted me. You brainwashed her, I said, voice cracking. He stepped closer. I saved her. From whatever miserable life you were giving her. I gave her structure, a home. You stole my child. And if I had to do it again, I would. Clicked. I pressed the hidden recorder in my jacket pocket. Got it. That I turned and bolted, pushing the door open so hard the bell snapped clean off. My ex-husband was already pulling up in the car. Did you get it? He shouted. I held up the recorder with trembling hands. Oh, I got everything. We took it straight to the police that night, not just the confession, but the forged documents, the hospital records, photos of Sophie before the kidnapping. The detective listened in silence, his jaw clenched. When the tape ended, he nodded. Once, we'll handle it from here. But I couldn't rest, not until she was in my arms again. The next day, they called me. We've got her, they said. I drove like a madwoman to the precinct. My ex was right behind me. When I walked in, she was sitting on a bench beside a social worker, holding a stuffed bear. She looked up, eyes wide, cautious, and then, recognition, real, sharp, deep. Mom? That single word shattered me. I fell to my knees as she ran into my arms. She smelled like shampoo and cinnamon. She fit perfectly. Like time had never passed. I held her, sobbing, whispering, I'm here, I'm never letting go again. And I meant it. They kept Marcus in custody while the charges were filed. Kidnapping. Fraud. Identity theft. It stacked up fast, but none of it mattered to me as much as the moment I got to take Sophie, my Sophie, home. She didn't remember everything. How could she? She was only 2 when he took her. But some memories. They were still in there, buried under years of lies. That night, in our tiny motel room, she asked, why did that man say he was my daddy? I didn't lie, because he wanted you all to himself, I whispered. But you were never his. You were always mine. She blinked, like she was processing it all in slow motion. Then she leaned into me and whispered, I had dreams about you. Tears slipped down my cheeks. I had dreams about you too, I said. Every single night. We stayed in Fair Hollow while the case unfolded. It was hard. People looked at me strangely, some with pity, some with suspicion. Marcus had fooled the whole town. Told them I was dead. That Sophie's mother was a drug addict who'd abandoned her. He'd painted himself as the hero of a story that never belonged to him, but the truth had claws. And it came out. In court, I sat just feet away from him. He looked thinner. Tired. But when our eyes met, he didn't flinch. He still believed what he did was right. The judge didn't. His confession sealed his fate. 10 years without parole. I should have felt triumph, but I didn't. I felt hollow, because I couldn't stop thinking about all the birthdays I missed. The first steps I didn't see. The lullabies I didn't get to sing. No sentence could return those moments to me. We started therapy, both of us. I didn't want to mess this up. Reuniting with your child after a trauma like that isn't simple. There are nightmares. Triggers. Trust that has to be rebuilt from scratch, but Sophie is strong, stronger than I ever imagined. One morning, she handed me a drawing she'd made. It was a picture of us holding hands. Above our heads, she'd written me and my real mom. I cried in the kitchen for 10 minutes straight. Now, every time I see her smile, or hear her laugh, or feel her fingers wrap around mine, I know I did the right thing. I fought like hell for her. And I won, not just the court case, but her heart. Her trust. Her love. She sleeps beside me now, curled up like she used to when she was a baby. Sometimes she wakes up and whispers, "Are you still here?" And I always say the same thing: I'll never leave again. Because now I finally have her back, and nothing will ever take her from me again. If this story moved you, please consider liking and subscribing. You never know who needs to hear that hope isn't lost.